At my wedding, my mother introduced my sister to the best man if only you'd met her first. She's the real catch. My sister winked, don't worry, I'm still single. My husband took the mic and said, she's been sending me DMS for months. Want to see? He held up his phone. My sister ran. Everyone watched. No one laughed. So, I'm 28 years old, and last week, I got married to Marcus, the love of my life. We'd been together for almost 7 years. The day should have been the happiest day of my life. But instead, it turned into a nightmare. I had always imagined my wedding day would be this perfect celebration, a joyful occasion full of love and happiness. I was marrying Marcus, the man I thought I would grow old with, and everything seemed to fall into place. Marcus was everything I'd ever wanted, supportive, kind, funny, and patient. And I was ready to start our new life together. But I should have known better than to expect a smooth ride when it came to my family. My family has never been what you'd call normal. It's always been complicated, divorced parents, old grudges, and unspoken resentments that linger just below the surface. My mom, Diane, has always been a force to be reckoned with. Charismatic, loud, and the kind of person who can command attention just by walking into a room, she wasn't exactly the nurturing type. She and my dad split when I was young, and ever since then, she's been, well, more interested in the spotlight than anything else. Over the years, my relationship with her became strained. I could never quite get her to acknowledge my accomplishments without comparing them to Nora's. Nora, my sister, was always the golden child. The girl who could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. She was everything I wasn't, carefree, glamorous, always the center of attention. And as much as I tried to make my peace with it, it stung. I loved her, but our relationship was strained because of it. She was the type to walk into a room, and everyone would gravitate toward her. I, on the other hand, felt like I was always trying to fit into the background. I had always been the quieter, more reserved one. So when I got engaged to Marcus, I was thrilled, but I also knew it meant dealing with my family in a way I hadn't done in years. I didn't expect them to make the wedding about them, but of course, I should have known. Weddings tend to bring out the best, and the worst, in people. The day of the wedding was beautiful. The weather was perfect. The ceremony, held at a small vineyard I'd always loved, was intimate and personal. I walked down the aisle, my heart pounding in my chest, only to meet Marcus at the end, waiting with a look of pure adoration. I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. The reception that followed was a blur of emotions. I was surrounded by family, friends, and people I hadn't seen in years, and everything seemed so surreal. There was laughter, music, and everyone was enjoying themselves, but there was a tension beneath the surface. I could feel it, even if I couldn't pinpoint exactly why. My mother, of course, was the life of the party. As usual, she was loud, charming, and managing to pull every guest into her orbit. And then there was Nora. She stood out in her tight red dress, glowing like she always did. She wasn't the bride, but in a way, she had a presence that could eclipse mine in a second. I tried to tell myself I didn't care, that it was my day, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being overshadowed. At one point, my mother came up to me while I was sitting with Marcus and some of the other guests. She had a mischievous glint in her eye. You know, she said casually, if only you'd met her first. She's the real catch, you know. I stared at her in confusion. What? My mother waved her hand, dismissing it as if it was nothing. Oh, nothing. Just saying, Nora's great with people. Very charming. Marcus, don't you think? I looked at Marcus, and I could tell he was uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat, but his response was a weak, yeah, she's fun. I felt a cold pit in my stomach. What did my mother mean by that? I forced a smile and tried to brush it off, but I knew deep down, this was the beginning of something bigger. As the evening wore on, the speeches began. The best man, Luke, stepped up to the mic first, cracking jokes and getting the crowd to laugh. It felt like things were finally settling into a normal wedding vibe again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then, Marcus stood up. I didn't expect him to take the mic, but he did. He smiled at me, and I smiled back, thinking he was about to say something sweet. And then it all changed. "I just want to say a few words about my amazing wife," Marcus started. "Allison is everything I've ever wanted, and I'm incredibly lucky to have her." There was a soft round of applause, and I smiled, grateful for his words. "But," Marcus continued, his voice changing just slightly, "there's something that's been bothering me today. Something that's been on my mind." My stomach flipped. I looked at him, unsure of what was coming next. His gaze shifted toward Nora, who was standing across the room, chatting with a group of guests. "You see," he said, looking back at the crowd, "Nora here has been sending me some interesting messages lately. Some messages that I think everyone should know about." The room went still. The air seemed to thicken as I looked at Marcus, my heart pounding in my chest. Marcus pulled out his phone, holding it up to the mic. "Want to see?" he asked, almost teasing. I froze, my mind racing. What was he talking about? What had he just said? And then, Marcus started scrolling. I could see the looks on everyone's faces shift, from curiosity to discomfort. The texts were showing on the phone screen, and I couldn't make sense of it. There, for everyone to see, were a series of flirtatious DMs from Nora. Compliments, winks, intimate messages. The messages were undeniably clear. Nora had been messaging Marcus for months. They weren't just friendly, they were inappropriate. And they were happening behind my back. I turned to look at Nora, my face drained of color. She stood there, frozen, her eyes wide in disbelief. Then, as the crowd stared in shock, she turned on her heels and bolted out of the room. The silence in the room was deafening. No one laughed. No one knew what to say. My wedding, which was supposed to be a celebration of love, was now a spectacle of humiliation. I sat there in shock, trying to process what had just happened. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. Marcus quickly put the mic down and walked over to me, his face full of concern. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his hand on my shoulder. I didn't know how to respond. All I could think about was the betrayal, not just from Nora, but from my mother too. They had both, in their own ways, done something that I couldn't come back from. I excused myself from the table, leaving the reception hall. My mind was racing, my thoughts a jumbled mess. How could this have happened? How could my own sister have done something so hurtful? How could my mother, who should have been supporting me, encourage it? I stepped outside, needing a moment to breathe. The cool night air hit my face, but it did little to clear the fog in my head. I needed to talk to someone. I needed to figure out what to do next. I stood outside, trying to catch my breath, but nothing seemed to make sense. The sounds from the reception, the muffled laughter, the clinking of glasses, felt distant, almost surreal. I needed to make sense of everything that had just happened. My sister. My mother. Marcus. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was crashing down around me. I leaned against the stone wall of the vineyard, my hands trembling as I tried to steady myself. Marcus had followed me outside, his footsteps quiet against the gravel. He didn't speak at first, and I appreciated the silence. I didn't know what I was feeling, let alone what I was supposed to say to him. "Al, I'm so sorry," Marcus said finally, breaking the quiet. "I didn't want to do that. I thought I was just trying to protect you." I turned to face him. His eyes were full of concern, and I could tell he felt guilty. But what was I supposed to say? Part of me wanted to blame him. Why hadn't he told me about the DMs before? Why hadn't he confided in me when he first received them? But then another part of me knew that this wasn't Marcus's fault. It wasn't his responsibility to protect me from my own family's betrayal. It was Nora and my mother who had crossed that line. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I don't understand why she would do this. Why would Nora?" Marcus took a step closer, his hands still on his sides, not quite touching me but hovering as if unsure whether to comfort me or give me space. I don't know, Al. I honestly don't. It started off innocent enough, just casual texts, but then it got weirder. I didn't know what to do. I thought if I just ignored it, it would stop, but she kept pushing. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe deeply. It hurt to hear Marcus say those things. Nora had always been the one who was fun, who was free-spirited, but this felt like betrayal at a level I didn't know was possible. How could she, my own sister, do this to me? Was it jealousy? Was it something deeper? Why didn't you tell me? I asked, finally looking at him directly. My voice felt tight in my throat. I didn't want to hurt you, Marcus replied, running a hand through his hair. I thought I could handle it, that maybe it would die down. I wasn't sure how you'd react, but now, I realize I should have told you. I'm sorry. His apology didn't feel enough. How could it? Nothing would undo what had just happened. Nothing would change the fact that my sister had been flirting with my husband behind my back. But at the same time, I couldn't stay angry at Marcus. This wasn't about him. This was about Nora. About my family's dysfunction. I wasn't sure what I felt anymore, but anger was definitely a part of it. Where is she? I finally asked. Where did she go? I don't know, he said, looking uncertain. I don't even know if she's still here. I think she left right after, well, you know. I didn't follow her. I nodded slowly, my thoughts racing. The last thing I wanted was to confront Nora right then, but I couldn't just leave things the way they were. I needed to hear it from her. I needed answers. I need to talk to her, I said quietly, pushing myself off the stone wall. Al, maybe it's better to let her cool down for now, Marcus suggested, reaching for my hand. Let's just focus on you. On us. I shook my head, pulling away. I can't. I can't just let this go. She can't just do this to me and run away. I need to know why. Marcus sighed but didn't push me further. Okay. But let's go together, alright? If you want answers, I'm coming with you. I nodded. We walked back inside the venue, the noise from the reception slowly growing louder as we stepped back into the room. People were still talking, but there was a definite unease in the air. I could feel the eyes on me, and I hated it. Everyone had witnessed the moment Nora had bolted from the room. The silence that followed had been almost deafening, and now, everyone was talking about it behind closed doors. I could see my mom talking to a few guests at the far end of the room. She looked up as we entered and immediately waved us over, but I didn't want to go anywhere near her. Not now. Not after what she'd said earlier, not after she'd basically set Nora up for a public humiliation. I couldn't look at her without feeling angry. Where's Nora? I asked one of the bridesmaids, trying to avoid eye contact with my mother. She's not in the bathroom or anywhere near the reception hall, the bridesmaid replied, her voice low. I think she left. A few minutes ago. I felt a tight knot in my chest. I was so close, and now she was gone. I need to go after her, I said, turning to Marcus. We can't let her just run off like that. She needs to face this. Marcus hesitated. I don't think it's a good idea to chase her, especially not tonight. She's embarrassed, Al. You're angry, and she's not in the right frame of mind. Maybe, I don't care, I cut him off, my voice sharp. She humiliated me. She betrayed me. I have every right to demand an explanation. And I'm not letting her get away with it. Marcus opened his mouth as if to argue, but then closed it, sighing. All right. Let's go. We left the venue and got into the car, driving in silence. I couldn't stop thinking about Nora, what had happened. What had she been thinking when she sent those messages to Marcus? She had to know how wrong it was. Had she done it because she wanted to break us up? Was there something deeper going on that I wasn't seeing? The ride felt long and agonizing. I didn't even know where to go. It didn't take long, though, before I spotted her car parked by the side of the road, just outside the small town where the vineyard was located. I could see her standing beside it, her posture tense as if she knew I was coming. I stopped the car and turned to Marcus. "Stay here. I need to talk to her alone." He nodded but didn't look happy about it. "You sure?" I just nodded, opening the car door before he could say anything more. I wasn't in the mood for comforting. I didn't want to hear that "she's your sister" speech. Not now. I had to get this out of me. I walked toward her slowly, my heart pounding as I approached. Nora didn't turn to look at me, even as I neared. Her arms were folded tightly across her chest, and she seemed to be staring at the ground, lost in thought. "Nora," I said, my voice low but firm. "We need to talk." She didn't respond at first. She didn't even acknowledge my presence. But when I took a step closer, she finally looked up, her face a mask of guilt. "I didn't think you'd find out," she whispered, her voice almost too quiet to hear. I felt a surge of anger, and it took all my willpower to keep my voice steady. "You didn't think I'd find out? You thought you could get away with this? Why, Nora?" She swallowed hard and turned her face away, wiping her eyes quickly. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "Then why did you do it?" I demanded, stepping closer. "What the heck were you thinking? Were you trying to ruin my wedding? Trying to destroy my relationship with Marcus?" I don't know," she said, shaking her head. I didn't want to lose him. I thought maybe if I could just get him to see me the way I saw him, things would be different. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I blinked, completely caught off guard. "You thought you could get Marcus to, what? Leave me for you?" Nora turned toward me, her face streaked with tears. "No. I didn't want that. I didn't know how to stop myself. I was jealous. I've always been jealous of you, Allison. Of how easy everything comes for you. I thought maybe if I could get Marcus's attention, maybe things would finally be different." I stood there, speechless, trying to process her words. It didn't make sense. It didn't make any sense at all. But it was real. She was standing in front of me, admitting that all of this had been because of her own insecurities, her own jealousy. And as much as I hated it, I realized something then. My sister, the one I'd always felt was so confident, so perfect, was just as broken as I was. But that didn't excuse her actions. And I had no idea what to do next. I stood there, staring at Nora, her tear-streaked face a picture of confusion and vulnerability. I wasn't sure what I was feeling anymore: anger, pity, disbelief. Maybe all of it. "You were jealous?" I finally said, my voice quiet but firm. "That's why you did this? You thought that if you could get Marcus's attention, everything would be better for you? That you could just replace me?" Nora shook her head, her eyes wide and pleading. "No, that wasn't it. I don't know how to explain it. I've always felt like I was living in your shadow. Everyone always told me how great you were, how smart, how kind, how perfect. And I never measured up. Marcus was the one person who didn't compare me to you. I guess I wanted to feel like I mattered too." I blinked, her words striking deeper than I expected. It was hard to reconcile the image of my confident, beautiful sister with the one standing before me, broken and raw. But that didn't change what she had done. "You don't get to do that, Nora," I said, my voice stronger now. "You don't get to try to destroy my relationship just because you feel insecure. That's not how this works. And Marcus? He's mine. He's always been mine." I watched as Nora's shoulders sagged, and she looked down at her shoes, too ashamed to meet my gaze. But I wasn't done. I needed her to understand the gravity of what she had done, to feel the weight of the betrayal. "You've ruined my wedding day, Nora. You've humiliated me. And what's worse, you've broken my trust. I can't even look at you the same way anymore. I paused, letting my words sink in. Nora opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand to stop her. This wasn't about forgiveness. Not yet. Not when the damage was this deep. You think I haven't felt like I was in your shadow? That I wasn't overshadowed by your perfect little life, your looks, your ability to get everyone's attention? I said, my voice steady but with a hint of frustration. But I never did anything like this. I never crossed the line. I worked hard to build my life, to build my relationship with Marcus, and you thought you could just take it from me. You thought it would be that easy. Nora was quiet now, her tears coming faster. She looked small, fragile. And as much as I wanted to feel sorry for her, I couldn't just let her off the hook. Not yet. Do you know what I'm going to do now? I asked, taking a step closer. I'm going to make sure this never happens again. I'm going to make sure people know what you did. Her eyes widened in fear. What do you mean? I'm going to tell everyone what happened, I said, my voice cold. I'll tell them about the DMs, about what you did to Marcus, about how you tried to ruin my marriage. I'll make sure everyone knows that you crossed a line. I saw the panic in her eyes. Nora was not the type to handle public humiliation well. It was clear she never thought it would go this far, that there would be consequences for her actions. I won't let you walk away from this without understanding how much damage you've done, I continued. You can't just run away from the fallout, Nora. You can't just ignore it. She opened her mouth, trying to plead, but I shook my head. I had no sympathy left for her. Not after everything. I'm not going to let you tear down everything I've worked for, I said firmly. You will own this mistake. You will face the consequences of your actions. Nora stood still for a moment, swallowing hard. She looked defeated, her pride crumbling before me. I could see it now, she had never expected me to fight back. She had never thought I would be the one to stand up for myself and demand justice. But here I was, no longer the quiet, passive sister. I'm sorry, Allison, Nora whispered, her voice barely audible. I never wanted to hurt you. But it was too late for apologies. Words couldn't fix what had been broken. And I wasn't interested in being her emotional crutch anymore. I'll forgive you when I'm ready, I said, my voice firm. But right now, you need to fix this yourself. And I'll be here to watch. With that, I turned and walked back to Marcus, who had been waiting in the car the entire time, his face full of concern. As I approached the vehicle, I could see the relief in his eyes. It had been a long night, but I wasn't going to let my sister's betrayal destroy what I had built with him. Marcus and I drove back to the venue, the silence between us only broken by the occasional deep breath. My mind was still swirling, still processing everything. But I wasn't going to let it ruin us. I wasn't going to let it destroy what mattered. When we walked back into the reception hall, the room went silent, everyone's eyes on us. I could feel the weight of their gazes, their curiosity, their judgment. But I didn't care. They weren't the ones who had to live with this betrayal. They weren't the ones who had been humiliated. I walked straight to the microphone, my heels clicking loudly on the floor. The crowd watched me, waiting for something to happen, and I was ready to deliver. I need everyone's attention, I said, my voice clear and steady. The crowd grew quiet. I could see my mother in the back, her face pale. Nora wasn't with her anymore. She must have left the venue by now, and I wasn't sure where she'd gone. But that didn't matter. I'm sure many of you noticed the awkwardness earlier, I continued, my eyes scanning the room. And I want to make it clear that what you witnessed was a result of something deeply personal that had been going on behind the scenes for a while. I paused for a moment, letting the tension hang in the air. My sister, Nora, thought it would be funny, or perhaps she thought I wouldn't find out, that she'd been sending flirtatious messages to my husband, Marcus. She tried to sabotage my wedding, and for that, I will never forgive her, I said, the words cutting through the room like a blade. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the guests, but I didn't stop. so I want everyone to know the truth. I'm not here to play nice anymore. What she did was wrong, and it won't be swept under the rug, I said, locking eyes with my mother, who looked horrified. I'm done being the good daughter. I'm done being the quiet one. And I'm done letting people walk all over me. The room was silent for a moment before the whispers began, but this time, they weren't about me. They were about Nora and the mess she had made. And it felt good. It felt like I was taking control of the situation for once. Marcus stood beside me, his hand on my back, his presence a grounding force. We're moving on from this, together, he said, his voice warm but strong. And we won't let anyone tear us down. I smiled at him, grateful for his unwavering support. I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders as the crowd began to talk amongst themselves, the attention slowly shifting away from the drama that had just unfolded. I knew that Nora's shame would follow her. But the most satisfying thing wasn't the public humiliation. It wasn't the way I had confronted her head-on. It was the fact that I had finally stood up for myself. For the first time in my life, I was putting my happiness first, no matter what anyone else thought. I walked out of the reception hall that night feeling like I had reclaimed my power, ready to move forward with my life, my marriage, and my future, without the toxic weight of my family's drama hanging over me.